Hello, I'm Jamila Musayeva, an international social etiquette consultant and author of etiquette books, Etiquette, the Ladies You Need to Know, and Afternoon Tea Etiquette. My books are now available for international shipment directly on my website. If you are a new viewer on my channel, welcome. Here I talk about etiquette, soft skills, self-development, sometimes wardrobe and beauty. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell button so you get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you're a returning viewer, I'm always delighted to see you back on my channel. Today's video is a video that was highly requested by my followers who reached out to me through Instagram direct messages as well as through email, asking me to do a reaction video to Dua Lipa enjoying French cuisine for Vogue. And I was hesitant in the beginning, to be honest, because from the two reaction videos that I've done so far on Hailey Bieber as well as on another celebrity that I do not remember now, my reaction videos got a lot of positive messages as well, but some of the fans of these celebrities took it very personal and thought that I was attacking their personality or I was intruding into, who they are. And to be honest, my reaction video is almost like any other reaction video. It's a reaction video of a dermatologist to a skincare routine. It is from a professional standpoint of view. It has in no means it intends to harass or attack or offend the celebrity that is doing it. It's just merely my analysis of what they're doing from an etiquette standpoint of view. So for all the fans out there of Dua Lipa, please don't take it personal. It's by no means an attack on her. I find her extremely gorgeous. I find her extremely talented. I love her music, but this is just my reaction to what she's doing at the table. So let's get started with the very first episode. We see her exaltation, her appraisal of the French food. So let's listen to this and we'll talk about it. So we see her go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, And though those sounds really add a lot of salt to the whole video, it makes it more lively, it makes it very authentic, it makes it very genuine. I do think that this exaltation sounds, this appraisal sound, should be kept in private. So if you are someone enjoying a high-end, French cuisine somewhere in a very nice Michelin star or very good restaurant, then you would rather keep those sounds of appraisal and satisfaction to yourself. Instead, you can just verbally say, I really love the food, it was very nice, thank you so much, if you want to thank the chef. So these sounds would rather not be pronounced out loud at the table, of course, unless you're enjoying the dinner at your family table at home and praising your mom for really good food that she has cooked for you. Otherwise, in social circumstances, in social gatherings, especially somewhat more formal ones, please refrain from making those sounds. Next, pay attention to where her elbows are, and we'll talk about this. So we see in this episode that she has placed her elbows at the table while she's just talking. There is no food at the table at this point. So as I mentioned earlier, when in previous etiquette videos, is that if there is no food at the table or the main course is cleared out, you just have dessert, coffee, and some fruits, then you're allowed to place your elbows at the table. So this is a permissible time to place your elbows at the table. For the rest of the time, when there is main course, when there is food at the table, then refrain from placing your elbows at the table, keep them close to your body. In this same episode, I want you to pay attention to how the table is set. So we see that there's a beautiful flower arrangement. It is there, but it's slightly away from the camera on both sides of the camera. Then there are tea light candles that are very small that are placed right next to it to add some light to the flower arrangement that makes it look more beautiful. And then we see that there are glasses to her right hand side. One is for white wine, and then the other one without the stem is actually for the water. You see that the napkin is placed on her left side. There is no tablecloth at the table, and there are no placemats, which is not very typical of French. Usually you might find it in English or American style of dining, you'll find placemats being placed at the table. And also there are no dish chargers. So there are no chargers for the dish. There's nothing. It's just an empty table. We will see later on that every dish is brought up, presented to her, and placed at the table together with the cutlery. So in this next episode, pay attention to napkin, to how it's unfolded, how it looks, and the little details written on the napkin. Let's take a look at it and we'll talk about it. So we see that the waiter is the one who actually unfolds the napkin and places it on her lap, which is usually the case if you have a waiter serving exactly you. So you might expect to get the napkin open and unfolded and placed on your lap. If, say, there's a huge table and only 6 waiters, not every person gets an individual waiter, you're then expected to unfold your napkin on your own. When you're unfolding a napkin, everything should be down below at the table level, below the table level. So you never unfold the napkin above you. You always do it below you. And the way that I will be using this and showing it above so I can show you, but usually it will be done below the table. So the way that the waiter has opened the napkin is in a triangular form like this, and you see that he's placing with the widest part, this part, on her lap closer to her body, and then this triangle is actually the one that goes below towards the table. So he places the napkin like that on her lap. We also see those cute little initials DA or DL, sorry, that they have done for Dua Lipa. Usually, if this is a private home, then the initials of a homeowner would be engraved on a napkin. But this was a really cute touch from the part of a chef and the restaurant to engrave her initials on a napkin. So she places the napkin with the widest part towards her body, with the triangular part outwards towards the table, and this is also a correct way of placing the napkin. However, I personally really like placing the napkin in a rectangular shape like this, where it's folded in half. With the half that is opening, I'm usually placing it towards me. So the napkin is placed like this, like in a rectangular form, with an opening side towards me. The reason I love to do so, and I'll be showing it above the camera so you can see, is that you can always wipe your fingers if it's greasy, if you've touched something, eating some kind of a snack or a amuse-bouche or an appetizer. So the tips of your fingers, you'll be wiping them off inside of the napkin and then closing it off. That way, from the above or from both sides of you, your napkin looks pristine, extremely clean. All the dirt is just the inside of the napkin. So I think overall it just makes a napkin on you look much neater. So the first term that we are learning from this video that is very French, it's amuse-bouche, which from French language translates as amusement for your mouth. Essentially, it's an appetizer, and usually it's a savory meal in a very small shape and form. You can eat it, and usually you're supposed to eat it with your fingers, or in America it's called finger food. So it's a really small savory item that is served before the main meal so that it ignites your palate and prepares you for the main course. If you are in France, you can get entertained by hearing the term amuse-bouche, but essentially it's just an appetizer. Let's take a look at what she's eating, how she's eating it, and pay attention to her general body movements in this episode. So we see that the chef instructs her to either put her left or right hand at the table, and then the waiter is serving her some caviar, and he places it between her index and her thumb in this small little area that's very gentle, very soft. He places caviar there, half a teaspoon of caviar there. He adds plankton, white cacao, and then she's instructed to taste it all together, because the combination of the differences of these tastes make your sense palate just go wow. This sweetness of cacao, this savoriness of caviar is just a very beautiful combination of flavors. So the acceptable way of eating caviar is actually like she's doing in this video, by placing it between your thumb and your index in this little area, because that way you're able to measure the temperature or feel the temperature of caviar, and caviar is usually served cold, it's never served hot or warm, or at the room temperature. It's usually between 25 to 35 degrees, and then you can also smell the caviar. So if it has a very pungent odor, you'll know that it has gone bad, and you definitely don't want to try it because it can really poison you, and caviar can get really easily spoiled, so you have to be very careful in storing the caviar. Caviar is actually usually presented either in a ceramic bowl or in a glass bowl, and you will never use metal, either spoon or a bowl, to hold it, because when it gets in touch with the metal, the taste of the metal can really be transferred through caviar, and so you really don't want to spoil the taste of caviar. So she's given a teaspoon or half of teaspoon of caviar, which is the regular portion. Make sure not to overeat it because it can be very, very heavy. So proper caviar should have a taste that is salty enough but not too salty, and then it has a very beautiful buttery taste afterwards. And you never chew caviar. You're only allowed to swirl it in your tongue, or use your tongue and put it up to your rooftop of your mouth, so you can actually pop the eggs and then allow the insides to just melt in your tongue and really savor the flavor. Oftentimes, caviar is also served as a part of, in small canapé forms. You can expect it to be served with a piece of little toast, or perhaps on a cucumber, or blinis, which are really small pancakes. Again, you will usually be served as an appetizer, and hence you eat it using your fingers. You'll usually say, if you have a cucumber with caviar, you will take a whole bunch with your fingers and eat it at one go. So in this episode, we see that she gets a dish that is a mix of three kinds of crabs, or two kinds of crabs, and they're mixed together. You'd often expect to eat a crab, if it's a piece of crab, if it's a crab meat, you'd expect to eat it with fork and knife. But since this is a mash form, and since they bring out a spoon for her to eat it with, she takes the lead and eats it with a spoon. So I always say, whenever you're at a restaurant, if, for example, your understanding is that I should eat a soup with, say, a spoon, if they serve you a fork, then you have to eat it with a fork. So the restaurant knows what kind of utensils to bring out with the meal. So here she gets the mix of two crabs, and she's served a spoon, so she eats it by scooping the spoon inside that mashed crab meat, and then she takes a bite of it. She actually took a rather big portion, and she acknowledges it, but I should say that she did a very good job at handling it very well and neatly, without creating much mess and without her cheeks really getting swollen with the crab meat. So I think she did a really nice job here. You see that she temporarily places her elbows on the table, and then she immediately takes them away, and she does it very gently, actually. And I would say that when you look at her with the elbows at the table, and when you look at her when her elbows are not at the table, you will notice the lightness of being, a lightness of holding yourself when you remove your elbows from the table. Almost like when you put your elbows at the table, you look very heavy and very big and sort of overpowering, versus when you take away your elbows and you have a nice posture, you look very light and very easy, and you look like you are being able to hold yourself really well at the table. So this is just an overall impression that I got from looking at her. So now let's take a look at this next episode where she's served an onion soup. Let's take a look at how she eats it. So we see here that she served the traditional French onion soup, which is, by the way, very, very thick, very nutritious. It's made of broth, there's onions, sometimes cheese. So it's not your classical soup per se, where you have very clear broth with some chunks of meat or rice or whatever, or puree like soup, like say mushroom or tomato. It's much thicker than that. So when she's being served a traditional onion soup, you see that she's given an oval shaped spoon. So there are two kinds of spoon that you'll get a soup with, and depending on the consistency of a soup, you'll get different kinds of spoons. The oval shaped one is usually for brothy soups that have chunks of meat, rice, pasta. So there are bits of chunks that have to get into the spoon. And the more round shaped spoon are the ones that are being served with puree like soups, say broccoli soup, tomato soup, mushroom soup. So something that has a one consistency. It is mixed in, there are no chunks in it. So you see that she's served an oval shape, and the reason you get an oval shape for this kind of a thick consistency that might have chunks of food in it is because the edge of that oval shaped spoon is much sharper than the butt of a round spoon. So she's using the spoon actually both as a knife per se, or a fork if you will, to cut a piece, or like insert and like separate a piece of that and then put it into her mouth. And the way she does it is by using the edge of the spoon to carve the thick soup, and then she's using the spoon by moving it edge side towards her mouth, which is the right way of eating if you are served an oval shaped spoon. If you have a round shaped spoon and you're eating some kind of puree like very smooth soup, all you have to do is just sip from the side of the spoon, open your mouth and just gently pour the soup in. That's the difference between eating a soup that has much thicker consistency with chunks of something in it versus a pureed one consistency soup. The next meal that she's eating is Tandoori Lobster. Let's take a look at how she's holding the cutlery and we'll come back. So now we see that she's been served with Tandoori Lobster and she's about to eat it. She uses fork and knife to eat the Tandoori Lobster. The way she eats it is actually a continental or the European way of eating. She holds the fork in her left hand and knife in her right hand, and she is keeping it in the same way for the duration of the time that she's eating it. So the American way would be switching or placing the knife usually on a side, switching to the right hand and continuing to eat with your right hand. The European way is holding the utensils as you all have, and even when you're transferring the food to your mouth, you will still hold on to the knife and then continue eating with a fork. She moves the fork with the tines facing downwards up to her mouth like this, which is the correct way of eating it. And then we see that she's taken a break and she has placed her fork and knife on the side like this. It makes it look like a rowing boat. So first of all, it occupies a lot of space. Second of all, it doesn't look very, I think, neat from the side. And third, the chances of your cutlery actually slipping and falling and staining the tablecloth are a lot higher, and you don't want that to happen. So what I would recommend doing is placing with the tines looking towards you of the knife like this on your plate and your fork on top of it. While you're taking a break, you can continue talking, explaining things and talking to each other if you're at a table with other guests. And if you are going to resume, then you pick them again at the same spot and continue eating like that. This also ensures that nothing falls from your dish and everything around you looks proper. Let's look at the next meal that she's eating and talk about what's the proper way of eating a pigeon leg. So in this episode, we see that when the chef is actually leaving, she has left her with the dish. She says you can enjoy the confit legs with your fingers. And so does Dua Lipa listen to her instructions and follow the lead. You see that they have wrapped the pigeon leg with an aluminum foil on the end, so she can actually hold by that part without getting her fingers stained or greasy from the pigeon leg. And she's holding it by the aluminum foil and she's taking a small bite of it. This is a customary way of eating any kind of finger food, or be it some kind of again, confit leg of a pigeon, or it might as well be a chicken. If you are being instructed that you can eat it with your fingers, then go ahead and do it. Especially when it's wrapped in an aluminum foil, you can easily hold it by that. It's almost a utensil on its own, so you keep your fingers free of grease and free of dirt. You are keeping it, holding it by the aluminum foil and taking one bite at a time. If again this was a bigger animal, say a turkey or a bigger chunk of something, then you'd use a fork and knife to cut a piece of that from the bone, separate it from the bone and eat it like that. If it doesn't have any wrap around it, then you use fork and knife, because we don't want to get our fingers stained and greasy while we're still at the table. But if it has an aluminum foil covered and you have the green light, to use your fingers to eat it. So once they're done with the main course, they are moving to desserts. And before the desserts, the French serve usually a tray of a board of cheese. This is particularly very French because in my country, in Azerbaijan, we serve cheese as a part of appetizer. It's salty, it's savory, it ignites the appetite. Actually, some cheese are very good at igniting the appetite, especially the salty ones, but they're also very good at digesting the food. So they're often used as digestifs. Usually that term is referred to drinks, but I will use that term as well for the cheese because some cheese are very good at helping you digest the food. So let's take a look at the board of the cheese that she served and we'll talk about it. So we see that they are serving a different variety of cheese and she's explaining every single one of them. And then we see that usually they come with crackers, some honey, maybe nuts. In this particular episode, we see that she is actually taking a bite of cheese with a knife. It made me feel uncomfortable and a bit worried for her. Again, you can always get a little slit on your tongue. You can, if the blades of the knife are quite sharp, it's not very safe and it doesn't look good to lick something off from the knife. We don't put the knife into our mouth regardless what we're eating. We don't lick off anything from the knife, no matter how appetizing whatever it is that is stuck on the knife might look like. Again, this is something you can perhaps do it at your own home if you want to indulge into that, but never do it at a restaurant, socially around people. If you pay attention to the mimics, we only get to see the lower part of the face of the chef, but if you get to pay close attention to her lips and her nostrils, you can actually tell that she has pursed her lips a little bit and her nostrils are slightly inflamed, and you can tell that she's either worried or shocked, or she definitely doesn't feel comfortable about Dua licking the cheese off from the knife. You see that she's been served some cheese with bread, so the expectation would be either she would apply that cheese on a bread or a cracker and eat it together like that. So you'll apply the cheese on a cracker and then use your fingers to put the cracker into your mouth, or if this were a hard cheese, then you would use a fork and knife to cut the cheese and take a bite with a fork. So from what I've seen, this was more of a smoother texture cheese, so maybe she could just use the fork to take a bit of it and taste it, or use a cracker to put it over it and taste it like that, but never lick it off the knife. By the way, if you want to learn more about how to create a proper cheese board, what kind of cheeses to select, how to properly cut the cheese, you can check out my cheese etiquette video that's available also on my channel. Now is our favorite dessert time. Let's take a look at what she's being served and how she's eating it. So first things first, before I get to analyze how she's eating the dessert, is my concern that she was presented with a lot of different desserts, and understandably, with everything that she's already tasted and she yet has to taste, she can't have a bite of every single dessert that was presented to her. My recommendation would be for Vogue in the future, when they're doing this video, is selecting the items even for the dessert, say just opt for 2, and then show us how she's eating it, show us the texture, show us the insides of the dessert. I feel like we got an overview of what she is being served with, what are different kind of desserts. We really don't get to understand even what her favorite cake, the Paris-Brest, is. So it's important to show, I think, the details, so we as viewers get to understand what is it that she is tasting. So we see that she is served, one of the desserts is a sponge-like cake-like dessert. I wasn't sure what it was, but she is eating it with just a fork. So here in front of me I have different items, different utensils. So I have fork, a knife, and 2 kinds of spoons. The reason I have this in front of me so that I can explain. So this kind of a spoon is the one that we would use to eat any kind of ice cream dessert. So if we're just being served with an ice cream, we might expect to get a scoop looking spoon like this that is easy to carve an ice cream and eat it like that. This is just a regular dessert spoon. Again, we can interchangeably use it as a teaspoon. Usually that's what we do at a household, but it can also be used as a dessert spoon if no other utensils are at hand. So you can actually use the spoon both as a knife and as a fork. So you use the edge of the spoon to cut or to break apart a cake, a muffin, and then use it to scoop and eat it. This is also a possible way. Or a third alternative is using a small dessert or fruit knife and a dessert fork to eat the dessert. That depends on the texture of the dessert that you're eating. So we see that she, I think, got a cake here, and she's actually using the spoon to cut the size. So I'll serve myself, these are not serving utensils, but I'll use the fork and knife to serve myself a little piece of a cake. I'll leave it here. And then she's been served with a spoon. So we see that she actually lifts the dish and the dessert and eats it like this. Again, because she has so many things at her table, she has to take the dish together with the dessert, and she doesn't have a separate plate for the dessert. She holds it together in a serving plate and eats it like that. This is understandable, But again, if this was at a restaurant and you would get a dessert that is being served for everyone, you wouldn't obviously pick up the dish. You would transfer a little bit to your own plate and leave your plate at the table, because we're seated at a high table. It's not a low table. We're not enjoying afternoon tea. You keep your plate at the table at all times. There's no need to lift it. And then she uses the spoon, the edge of the spoon, to break a piece, and then she uses the spoon to eat the dessert itself like this. If you're eating some kind of a tart textured dessert and it's a bigger one, then you can use either just a fork or fork and knife to break it. If it's a small one that you can actually pick up with your fingers and eat with 1 or 2 bites, use your fingers to eat it like that. The second dessert that she tries in this video is a chocolate cake, something to do with chocolate, and it seems like it has an ice cream texture by the way that she's eating it. I can see that she's using the spoon to scoop it in. So instead of that chocolate dessert that she has, I'm using an ice cream. It has the same kind of a texture, so she uses the spoon to scoop an ice cream and takes a bite of it. This will apply to any kind of a dessert that has that kind of a texture, say a mousse, tiramisu, an ice cream. So you'll use the spoon to scoop a piece and then eat it as well with a spoon. So now we see that she has either taken a break or done eating the dessert. She has placed the spoon back inside the bowl. Her bowl that she's eating the dessert from is not as deep as this one, but again, it has higher edges than the regular dish, and she has placed the spoon back inside. So this is the correct way of placing the spoon, either if you're taking a break or you're done with a meal. Again, in my personal opinion, I think it would be rather much more interesting to watch her eat 2 particular desserts from, closer viewpoint, seeing what is inside, how she eats it, rather than see a lot of different variety of desserts and only get to see a glimpse of what she's tasting. That's my personal view. Overall, my impression of her was very nice. I think she held herself very nicely at the table. She was very well-mannered. She didn't make much noise, or she didn't make too many movements at the table. Her elbows were always very close to her body. She handled the cutlery really well. Again, with the exception of the introductory noises that she made, I think that just added some more spice to the whole video. But overall, I think she did a really good job. Thank you so much for watching this video until the very end. I hope that you enjoyed my reaction video to Dua Lipa. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and let me know down in the comment section below what are some other video suggestions that you have for me, and I'll be more than happy to shoot new videos for you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!